Lloyd and Clara and Ethan Mull's operation out here. Um, I kind of got connected with them last spring. So spring of what was that? 24. Ethan contacted me about some seed and uh, been kind of doing some business together ever since. Um, I I told him right away when I first came out here and looked at his stuff last year. I was like, "Oh, you're going to be a stop one of these days for the conservation district." So they plan it this end of May, correct? Yep, end of May. Um, if you guys want to, you can walk on down that way, kind of get an idea of what it really looks like. But with that, I will let Lloyd kind of talk about their operation a little bit and what they're trying to do here. So just hold that; that'll be fine. Just hold on to that one.
Well, I guess I don't exactly know what you want to know, but we're trying to. We have a cow-calf operation. We're trying to get to where we don't have to feed our cows. We're trying to get into a grazing operation where we can try to graze as many months out of the year as we can. This is the first time we've tried a summer cover crop. We've been using winter
stockpile.
Yeah, winter stockpile, and we'll graze our milo stalks first, and then we'll go to the winter stockpile cover crop and graze that. Last year we were able to, one group of cows, we were able to make it till the 1st of April.
Yeah.
1st of April before we had to start feeding any supplement to them. Unless we had a bad spell or something, we might roll a bale of hay out, but as far as having to feed much, we made it that far. Another group, we had to start feeding them a little bit quicker than that, but I don't know what else you guys want to know.
How many head are you guys running out here?
We've got about 300 cows and out here.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Okay. There's about 80 pairs out here. 86, isn't it?
Something like that.
About 86 pair. And this is an 80. And you've got it divided up. How many acres are they?
There's 10 here. They were on 10, and then there's another 10 where you can see the cows right now.
We just moved those last night.
We just let them, but they got to come back into this one to get to the tanks. We're not moving tanks that many times.
Just keep the microphone right close to your lips, almost.
I've got it here.
How many pins do you have out here?
Sun hemp, mung beans, golden German millet, sorghum sudan, rape, sunflowers, and cowpeas. Does that sound right?
How many days do you think you'll be out here for your goal?
My goal is a lot higher than what we're getting. They're stomping a lot more than I thought they were gonna.
Yeah, but that's all right.
That's all right.
That's all right.
Or make your paddock smaller.
Yep.
If you want more, cut your paddocks in half.
Mob them up tighter.
No. And this was silage last year. Right, got almost 20 tons the acre on our silage. And then it was wheat before that.
But if you guys want to, we can walk down that way. You can get a better idea of what it looked like as a stand. Because you got some pigweeds out here, but if you just look at the stand, you're not going to notice this many pigweeds till they start removing the canopy. The German millet was what? Almost to your belly button with the head. I mean, it was pretty darn tall German millet. So
our weed, what we used, didn't exactly work, as you can see. So we'll try something different next time.
There's your millet plant.
right. So you guys got any other questions for either Ethan or Lloyd? And otherwise, I'll hand it over here to Blake and let him talk about what he's seeing. And like I said, we can always move on down a little bit. We got time.
How long were they on this 10-acre patch before you?
5 days.
5?
So, I'm going to get feedback on this mic or not?
Nope.
Okay. Can you guys hear me okay? So what I'm seeing out here is soil that I'd give my eye teeth for. Okay? Obviously, when we look at soil around the world, you've got 3 classifications of soil type, right? You've got your clay component, you got silt, you got loam, and then you got sand too. You got 4 classes. At home, we're heavy Brookston clay soil, imperfectly drained glacial lake bottom. So when I see this stuff here, and I look at it, and I can grab a hold of it like this, and you can feel right away there is a nice cross section between some silt, some loam, and if I brought it to my teeth, I'm sure I'd pick up a sand fragment as well, right? So obviously there's some challenges when you have sand for what? What's the limitation with sand? Water holding capacity. So it's Ethan, right? Your son?
Yes.
So Ethan was complaining. He says, well, I got too much litter on the ground. Okay? I'd like to see him consume more. Well, I always was taught when we're doing grazing, you want to take 2/3, leave 1/3. Now, some guys in different environments think we want to go to a take-all approach. So I think it's finding that happy balance and trying to come back to that one thing that's very seldomly talked about, which is keeping it in context. Okay? And the context is going to be unique for every person that's out there. So I look at this soil and right away I see, wow, what an opportunity. Obviously the cows don't seem to be struggling. They're taking the majority of the plant. You're leaving some of these plants, and he touched upon it, maybe got here a little too late with the pigweed. But being at Greg Judy's farm, if anybody knows Greg Judy in Missouri, he's grazing pretty aggressive ragweed, okay? And the ragweed, giant ragweed, that is, and he said, when I do the forage analysis on a plant like giant ragweed, he said it's even better than alfalfa for protein. Okay, so it's all about perspective. Those plants that we think are weeds, definitely the cattle have times throughout their vegetative life cycle that they prefer to graze them. At home, my challenges are with Canada thistle, okay? So we get the cows out there, and if you don't have the right numbers, if you don't have enough numbers, and you get this rapid growth, sometimes those weeds get away from you, right? And then they get to the point where you got to look at alternative management techniques of how to combat this. The only thing that I would see out here is, yeah, they're going to bring the cows back. Aaron just said it a second ago. If he wanted it to have bigger impact, move them in tighter, right? Move the group into a smaller area to really pound it down. The good thing about moving them in tighter too, you'll get better nutrient distribution, more uniform nutrient distribution, the tighter we go. So yeah, anyways, those are my observations without. Yeah, so the one thing we talk about is the rhizo sheath around roots. So you can see here, when you, like, they're just beautifully colonized, right? All that glue, that biota that sits down there in the soil root zone is all adhered to those roots. You can take a look and cycle that around. That's a nice example there that Aaron picked out. Any questions from anybody? I don't want to monopolize the microphone. I just thought I'd throw in some input here because Tyrell thought I should, but looks good, you guys. The cows seem content, right? A little noisy, but they're just curious, right? They're like, why are we on show? Why are we on display today? We're being ignored over here. They're like children. Where's the snacks? Where's the snacks? They think we're in charge of moving them. You guys are the hosts. Here.
You guys want to walk, and we'll walk towards where we can see where it's actually standing currently.
Who works for the NRCS. He would say, careful, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sasquatch country. You might find yourself some squatches out here in this big, robust cover crop.
Russell ain't here.
Russell's not here. He is almost built like a Sasquatch. Russell Hedrick from Hickory, North Carolina. Some of you might know Russell. But talk about diversity. So one of the things I'm going to talk about is I did a Nuffield Farming Scholarship in 2013, 2014, and afforded me the opportunity to travel around the world. And my study topic was conserving farmland with cover crops and the importance of biodiversity. And as Dwayne Beck, who I've got to know over the years, said to me when I met Dwayne at the outset, he said, Blake, what was your native flora and fauna where you live? So it's Carolinian hardwood forest. And he said, in that forest, he said, every year, what do you find? He said, you find those trees, right? I said, yep, absolutely. What do the trees do? Well, they produce what? Leaves. What else do they produce? What do the trees produce? Fruit, maybe, right? In the form of either tender fruit or nuts. Obviously, leaves. And then beyond the trees themselves, the big tall oaks, maples, ash, there's all these different species, but then under cover, there's diversity, right? There's more other types of plants that sit on the forest floor. So Dwayne Beck said to me straight away, he said, Blake, that means you have lots of water. To sustain those plants, you just have to figure out how to get the water. So fast forward to the prairie, where this was native years ago, with the exception of a few trees that really are foreign. Keith Thompson would say that the trees are foreign. Is that correct, Aaron?
Here, other than cottonwoods,
right?
In the draws, yeah.
Right. So the trees have been introduced, but to think when this was initially covered by prairie, the biodiversity that would have been alive and well here, right, with the above ground plants is one thing, but the world's largest living organism is what? Does anybody know what the world's largest living organism is? Fungi. A fungi, right? So below soil level, the things we can't see driving 50 mile an hour down the county road. And to think back when the prairie was here, much along the same lines, it's that fungal network, right? Those fungal hyphae that stretch for literally thousands and thousands and thousands of miles that bring the nutrients and the water to the plants, right? Because like this environment in the prairie, we would have went months at times without any forms of precip. But yet the prairie still sustained itself. It still produced seed, it still produced plants, plant material, right? And so I look at this system here to mimic diversity, right? Because I always say too, one of my taglines is diversity trumps density. So when we're planting crops, we get enamored by looking at like that soybean as a monoculture, right? And we can visualize, we can see how thick that is. We can estimate the population to be, what, 160,000? I don't know, I'm just guessing, 155, 170, 180,000 seeds per acre. But it doesn't have to be thick to be effective. You know, if we're planting wheat, for instance, we're 1.2 to 1.5 million seeds per acre. It doesn't have to be like your carpet, ladies and gentlemen, to be effective, right? So the more species we can add, and the weeds become another species to the system, the more that stimulates the biology. And I love that we look across here, we start looking at the diversity in these cover crop blends that people have put together. And that's what it's all about, driving these blends and driving soil biology. So I'm going to hand the mic off to one of the hosts here and see what they have to say about what their observations are as it pertains to the time they've been doing these blends and compared to their traditional methodology that they used prior to this.
Hold on to both of them.
Both of them?
Yep.
Well, it was like 3 years ago when we planted the first cover crop, and before that, this might have been a straight sedan, and we would have swathed it and baled it. Then you got to feed all that back out, so I don't know if we can. When we're like right now, we're grazing this, our pastures are resting, so they're getting more regrowth, they're getting stronger and all that, and then we can go back in the wintertime when we can graze those pastures then. So where this would have been a hay crop before, we're grazing it now, and that's giving us regrowth in the pastures to go back and graze later on. I don't know. Yeah, and then we don't have to spread manure after you feed hay, and if you're feeding in a dry lot, then you got to spread all the manure back out. It's just real expensive, all that stuff. And then I wanted to add one reason that this first paddock's so big, we put 3 different pastures together, so there's 3 different bulls, so we left them have more room the first while, so they didn't tear the fence down fighting.
That's all volunteer millet seed.
Because we've also changed our calving period. We got tired of this out in the winter when it was freezing out, frozen ears, frozen feet. So we switched our calving That also helps on our feed bill. We're calving in April, May, and June. That's why the calves look a little smaller maybe than what you're used to looking at for this time of year.
What do you plan to follow this with next spring?
This will go to wheat this fall.
Oh, this fall.
If we're lucky, we'll have wheat pasture. We can put the calves back out on, but who knows?
It might not make it.
Pounds and not bushels right now.
So I'm not here to pick on anybody, okay? Trust me, but I'm here to help everybody learn. So I'm going to ask a real intimate question. Have any of you in this audience here never smelt their own soil? Anybody? Never smelt their own soil. We're not talking about flatulence, farts, right? Has anybody here never taken the time to smell their own soil? Put your hand up. You've never taken the time to smell your own soil. I appreciate honesty. Full points. Yourself, you're a farmer, right? But never smelt your own soil. Anybody else? I was in Queensland. Okay, so that is a state within the country of Australia, Queensland. Sugarcane country. And I grabbed the shovel and I stuck the shovel in the ground and I pulled it up. And in sugarcane, it's like massive, massive, massive tons of biomass, right? Like 18 tons to the acre, like big time or more, right? And I bring the soil up to my nose and the guy said, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "Well, just smell this." And he thought, like, are you offering him cocaine? Like, he didn't know, right? And it was so bizarre. So he grabs a hold of it and you could just see his eyes just like popped open, right? Because what are farmers addicted to, young man? What are farmers addicted to?
Money.
Money.
I think money was a good answer.
What about old farmers? What are old farmers addicted to?
Well, still money.
The smell of diesel fuel, and soil, right? When they do tillage. How many farmers comment on, "Wow, that soil ever smelled good"? And all I think about is, we're just burning off carbon, right? We're just burning off carbon. All those Actinomyces that are listed there in the soil, as you turn that over, you get that rush, right? That flux. I want people to come over here. We're going to dig in the soil. And if you've never done this before, I want you to bring that soil to your nose. And I want you to appreciate the bouquet that comes off of this soil. Because I'm convinced if I could blend just the right ratio of diesel fuel and soil that smells like this, I could be the next Ralph Lauren, right? Hugo Boss, you name it, right? Come over here and just bring it up to your nose. Can I have a couple clumps here, please?
You know you're with good people when you're sniffing the soil.
That's right. That Canadian, he's on crack. Eh? Not the microphone. Smell this. Pass it around. Pass it around, Aaron. Pass it around. Have you guys smelt your own soil?
Yeah.
Good. And?
Tyrell's been around.
Since Tyrell's been around. Okay, good. Good. And?
Wherever you graze, I think it smells better, more rich.
And what about you, Dad? Are you drinking the secret sauce too? Do you think it smells better?
He knows more about that than I do. I probably haven't smelled as much as he has.
Good.
Being honest.
And what about Mom? Mom's pretty quiet over there. Mom, have you taken the time to smell the soil too?
Not this soil, but I like the old farmers. I like the smell of filled up soil when they.
How you brought up.
So what I see inevitably we find ourselves as farmers having to do soil reparation, right? Remediation, repair work, especially after adding things like tile drainage, right? And when I'm going across the field and I'm having to do this tillage, I get ADD, attention deficit disorder. And all I see are $20 bills going out the smokestack, right? I have no desire to sit on that tractor seat and depreciate machinery and spend the time, the fuel, the energy that's required to do all this tillage. I am very humbled today that Tyrell or the committee decided to add to their t-shirts the hashtag that I created. So the hashtag is that number sign on the back of your t-shirt that says number sign, roots not iron. So that's my IP. That's my intellectual property. I created that hashtag. I shared it on Twitter, and it's gone around the world. And so for what it's worth, I haven't monetized from that hashtag at all, but that's not me. I'm all about trying to share and help people learn. And so I'm very humbled to see that you added that, Tyrell. So thank you.
Okay, this is across the road on
Yeah.
soybean field. Smell that.
So dramatically different, right? There's not nearly the same aroma, right?
So anyone who hasn't smelled their soil.
So just leave that in the leave that shovel full right there. Okay, so just pull it back carefully, the profile, and then dig the sample and lay it right beside it. Okay.
Yeah, grab a smell of that. If you smell
So
the other one,
just leave it intact for 1 second. First, Tyrell, go over there right where it's fresh, where it hasn't been even hardly grazed.
Want my own hole.
Go over there a little bit further. Grab some. Right in there. Perfect. What I see when I look at this from across the road, we can tell how much drier it is straight away. And so you think that this plant is going to transpire a lot more water, right? But this plant here, this soil over here that just has a monoculture, look at how much drier it is compared to this stuff that he's going to put out here. Now, when you look at it, the aggregation, the soil fragments at the top are remarkably different, where we've got more biology working for us than over here with just the monoculture. Circle around, take a look at that at your own discretion.
Real quick, he was talking about intensity. Bryce and Moles, you can't guess, but how many pounds an acre do you think this mix was out here?
How many pounds of seed per acre?
Yeah, how many pounds of seed?
32.
17 pounds an acre. Cost was less than $25 because that's what Lloyd said he wanted in his mix, was less than 25. We're right around 25 at the max. So yeah, 17 pounds an acre. In our environment, and I learned this from Bryce and Nick. It's not so much the pounds an acre as it is seeds per pound. That's how you make up the intensity in a stand. Yeah. So I mean, if we had 2 pounds of the German millet in here, well, that's 360,000 seeds an acre, right? At least. Yeah. I mean. Yeah. I mean, so you throw in the legumes, and if you are going to have the diversity, you can't have too much of your sorghum sedans or your millets because otherwise you're not going to see the other stuff. You're just wasting your money. So you might as well just throw in a pound of sun hemp, a pound of flowers, a pound of rape, and then the grasses, and go on down the road.
So one of the things I talk about building a blend is I refer to it as the seed size spectrum in this regard. And a lot of farmers at home that aren't down this path of adopting to this cover crop mentality, they say, well, my God, those small seeds cost a lot of money, which they do because they're hard to grow, right? They're hard to sort out. They fall through every crack in the combine, the wagon, whatever. So I take a simple ballpoint pen with a clicker, and I help people visualize this because I'm a visual learner. Most of us are visual learners. So when you have that ballpoint pen right here like this, at the one end, we've got the clicker. Everybody's familiar with the clicker? And at the other end, we've got all the way down to the ballpoint right here where the ink comes out of. And so with that in the middle of this range, right? At the far end, at the clicker end, I usually show a picture. At the clicker end, I'll have a seed that's quite large in my blend, like faba beans. And at the bottom end, I'll have a seed like kale or phacelia, which is like iron filings. So when you have a plant like kale or rape or something like that, that's at this end, like we just touched upon, there's a lot of seeds per pound. So even though the price per pound looks expensive, you're getting a lot more seeds. But like Tyrell just said, if we load it up on all of these seeds over here, it can overtake the blend, and so it really restricts your diversity. So in the middle range, right in the median is a seed that's familiar to all of us, which is soybeans. And the good thing about that is every air seeder, grain drill, planter usually comes with a chart that allows us the opportunity to set the drill based on their recommendations for soybeans. So if the chart says you need 1/4 inch of an opening for a grain drill to put on X number of pounds of soybean seed, that's usually a good starting point as to where I sort of aim and sort of set my drill. Because a lot of people get paranoid when they invest all this money in a big diverse blend with all of these big seeds, little seeds, and they open up the bag if it comes to them already pre-mixed. And like, how is this not going to settle out as I bounce across the field trying to plant this stuff? But because the big seed creates a space, the little seeds fill that void. Has anybody here still at the early stages of adoption of cover crops? Real early stages? Okay. So most people that I talk to, they say, well, how is that not going to settle out? And I said, just trust me. It'll work, and they'll sit there in perfect suspension in your air seeder, your grain drill box, whatever. And I like to use a plant in my blend, just commercial corn, right? So it's usually I can go to any seed dealer and they'll have some plot bags left over at the end of the season. I usually can get them for free of charge because they don't want to have so many rodents around. And I'll use that trace amount of corn seed in my blend, and I can look across the field knowing that I have such a small percentage of corn in that mix, and to see how well of a job I've done mixing the seed up, because corn grows up taller than most plants. So I can sit there on the edge of the field and I can say, oh, there's a corn plant, there's a corn plant, there's a corn plant. And I can relatively be assured that I've done a good job of mixing that seed. Okay? That's how I talk about the seed size spectrum, just to try and visualize it so that we can understand exactly what we're talking about, right? Does that help people? Anyways, next question for either myself or one of the hosts here or one of these other experts. If you want to call them experts, say, here.
What's your break even on this versus across the road? And it's a loaded question. That's up to you. Whatever you value grazing at.
Well, it's hard to say right now. This cover crop's not penciling out if you charge yourself cash rent. Okay. We're not getting enough days. If you don't charge yourself the cash rent, then we're doing all right. But then there's all the benefits that you can't necessarily put a money value on this year. Mm-hmm. You know, in the future we'll gain from this. But
can you expand on that for people that aren't at that stage yet? So expand on what you mean by gaining in subsequent years.
Well, I mean, we'll have all this water holding capacity from laying all this down, and then, you know, we're storing carbon, and the legumes are doing a little bit, so we're gaining some nitrogen there. How much, you know, who knows? But
do you have to charge yourself cash rent, or is it paid for, and can you only charge yourself taxes?
We could just do taxes.
Yeah,
if it's paid for, you know, I mean, yeah, it's okay, but
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
truly your expense that you have in there, unless you have this as a separate enterprise.
I was like, that's where the farm, when you charge it to the farm, you can lose money, right?
Yeah.
But what are you adding the value to your cattle in a good cycle, right?
Yeah.
You're maybe increasing your numbers, holding on to them longer. Calves are worth a couple $1,000, right, for even a 4-weight. So if you can carry a few more, like last year, our graze out rye grossed almost $600 of beef.
Mm-hmm.
But on the cash flow to the farm, it loses money. Right. But we still made money.
Yeah.
So I try to put my loss at the farm and appreciate the cattle.
And
so there's a balance.
If you have stacked enterprises, there's going to be a give and take on any of those enterprises if they're vertically integrated.
And right now, exploit the beef market. 100%. Because your soybeans, you're going to get whatever they
What's your break even on the soybeans?
That's a mom question.
That's a mom. She's
Come on, Mom. Get over here.
Money, you're making money.
Right.
Come on, Mom. Don't be embarrassed. Seriously, we want your input.
Well, I haven't figured
Go to the. Can you go to the mic, please?
Then the other thing that you don't really know how to put a value on is the resting the pastures. we're
Precisely.
gaining there.
Precisely.
On that field across
Hold that a little
oh,
closer.
on the field across the road, I haven't figured all of our expenses for that. But when I do, I mean, I take into like your taxes and everything that we put into it per crop. And yeah, I mean, I haven't figured that yet.
In the last 2-3 years, what's your average? You think you would?
It's not a lot.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
It's not a lot of profit anyway. I mean, I don't know on the break. I can't tell you the exact dollar amount, but I know that the last couple years, our profit per crop has not been a lot.
Right.
We actually had some 40 bushel soybeans last year, and I was feeling really good. And she came in the house and said, "You lost money."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, crap."
Here we go again.
Yeah.
So that's where I think when I talk, and a lot of people
White
understand,
snake.
you got to figure out your risk management. Why are we farming above our means? If we potentially raise a good 40 bushel soybean crop and it's still not profitable,
Is that on?
we were farming above
might be
our
off.
means.
It might be
right?
off. The mic's off, I think.
Check.
Yeah,
It's got a sensitive button.
So yeah, what I'm saying is farming above your means. So you got to look at those numbers. I mean, for us, we look at crop insurance as, that is your safety net, right? So if something happens in there, and we look at our APHs. So if our APH is 25 on beans, and a 40 still doesn't get you profitable, you're spending too much money in it
And
somewhere.
that was rented ground, I have to say that.
And rented ground's tougher because you got to push it hard.
Wasn't
So
our own ground on that one.
Well, I was just going to say real quick, you're saying you're not getting enough days. I mean, me just looking across, I'm really not seeing that you're missing any forage.
No.
You're missing stem,
You're getting the
but
lead.
but you're going to lose condition if you're going to force stuff to graze the stem anyways. And so it's always, because you always figure, I mean, how many tons do you think standing here an acre?
15 plus.
15
Plus.
metric tons.
No, tons. Ton.
So you're only going to get 7.5 tons roughly of actual grazing.
I think you're getting 2/3 of 15.
You think so?
Mm-hmm.
You think that's what they're getting right now?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you got to run the numbers, but yeah,
And that's just above ground. You're not
Right,
calculating the tonnage
Yeah,
below ground,
yep.
right? You're getting all that root mass too, right? You're getting all that root mass. We're just always enamored above ground because we can see it, right? What's the tonnage below ground when you have a root mass that's there versus a root mass that's across the road, right? We all know the answer. It's as clear as the nose on our face. The word I was looking for to get out of these guys was, once we start doing this, what I see and what I've observed on our farming system is we start to increase resiliency. So you guys are going to get sick of these Canadian stories, but here I go. Okay? Farm with my dad. My dad is the eternal pessimist. Eternal pessimist. My dad grew the biggest wheat crop of his life this year, and I was excited, right? Off the farm he never had before. I think it was 110 bushel the acre. Great crop. And my dad's like, well, so-and-so, he's getting more. I said, well, who? Because he's at the other end of the county, different soil type, more rain, blah, blah, blah. Never content, my dad. Okay? A few years ago, I'd had the cows in there. We grazed the cows. It was a hairy vetch cover crop that came out of winter. Cows left. We no-tilled corn into there. I got a respectable corn crop, I think 180 dry bushel after the corn had already been grazed, or the cover crop had been grazed. I'm into the field the following year. We no-tilled soybeans into those corn stalks. It was one of those years where it's lackluster, just like you talked about for soybean yields. Across all of our acres, I think we're in a 40 bushel yield environment. And normally we're harvesting at home. Our soybeans range from about 2.5 to 3.3 RM, relative maturity. And so those beans that year were 40 bushel average across the board. And you're just sort of going through the paces of trying to finish harvest. We've all been in that position before where we're just trying to put the year to bed. And I'm harvesting the last field of soybeans. And I'm sitting on the seat of the combine and I'm thinking to myself, wow, these beans are pretty darn good. And I could no longer, the sooner I thought about that, I couldn't pull the hydrostat back fast enough, and I plugged the combine dead. Stalled it right in the spot. And we worked at it for a day to get the combine unplugged. I ended up having to hook my CVT tractor to the side of the combine and just slowly pull the rotor with a bubba rope to break this big wad loose, and it was in there like compressed particle board. Those beans just were shy of 60 bushel when the rest of our soybean crop for the year was 40, like I said. So what we're seeing is on a year where we're not getting the amount of rain, we're increasing the resiliency. That's the word I'm looking for, the resiliency for our annual crops. So fast forward, I had a conversation with my neighbor, and our farm touches the main, you guys refer to as an interstate, but we call it a provincial highway. In Canada, it's spelled out as the 401 highway, but we call it the 401. And so on the other side of the highway, a farmer neighbor of mine, who's still gracious enough to share some information as far as yield of what he gets in his system versus me. I said, how did your beans do? And he said, well, I've had that farm for over 50 years, the worst crop of my life. I said, well, how'd they do? Well, they're about 25 bushel the acre. So I just told you that all of our average across the board were 40 bushel, right? Across all of our acres except that one field. And there's literally 100 acres in between him and myself. And he says to me, he says, Blake, well, how did your beans do? They look pretty awesome. I looked at those beans all year. I said, well, they were good. Well, how did they do? I said, well, they were just shy of 60 bushel. Do you know the first words out of his mouth after I told him that?
Liar.
No. He said, well, we might have had a touch of hail. So I share that story with you because my dad, at the end of the season, was bitching and moaning about my weeds, right? I'm growing non-GMO soybeans. My fields do not look as pretty as those ones across the road, but I'm not transfixed on aesthetics. Has anybody got a paycheck for aesthetics? Anybody? Paid money for how your beans look, how clean they look? Anybody? Put your hand up. Just like home, just like home. So my dad says, I'm really not happy with all these weeds you got. I said, well, I'm not happy with it either, but I don't control the chemicals. You know, I can't predict when it's going to rain to activate some of this chemistry, as you know. And I said, you've been farming a lot longer than I am. That's a definite challenge. I said, you know, our beans, Dad, I said, they were 40 bushel the acre across the board. Yeah, not a very good crop. I said, I agree with you. I said, you know what those beans were where the cows were? And so I said, he goes, I don't know. You never share the yield data with me. My dad is supposed to be retired on paper, but still kicks me in the ass every once in a while. And I said, well, they're just about 60 bushel. Wow. You know, and just sort of shuts up, doesn't say anything. And so I said, do you know what the neighbor's beans were? And so I told him they were just about 20. And my dad's like, well, you can't go by that. There's literally 100 acres in between the neighbor's farm and my farm, our farm. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to go by, right? What am I supposed to go by? It's the same soil type. It's the same environment. We've had the same precipitation. The only difference is the change of management, And so, not to pick on people, but their rotation is an alternation, right? Dwayne Beck would say that. It's not a rotation, it's an alternation. And their alternation is beans and wheat, right? Beans and wheat, beans and wheat. They've given up growing corn. Older farmers, right? They've got rid of their infrastructure as far as grain handling. So they don't have a grain storage facility. They don't have a grain dryer. Corn's a pain in the ass. There's a 3-crop rotation for these older farmers. Beans, wheat in Florida. Has anybody heard of it? Right? They want to get their work done so they can hurry up, hook up the trailer, and head south, right before the snow starts to fly. And so tragically, the biggest loser in that scenario is the soil itself, right? Because they're no longer farmers, they're miners, right? And they're eroding collectively. Our largest capital asset is what as farmers? Our soil, right? Our farms. And on our farm, you know, I'm not so sure I'm going to have a successor, right? Our daughter just graduated from mechanical engineering, and our son is going into 3rd year computer science. He could be well positioned for a career in agriculture with where AI is going to take us to, right? But you know, if he doesn't love it, we all know that this profession sometimes can be a life sentence, right? So you got to put your pants on, as I was afforded the same opportunity, and we've afforded that to my kids. That's my parents would say to me, you know, put your pants on and go to work. If that means you're a farmer, great. If it means you're something else, we're happy with that too. So, and I've been afforded the opportunity in our business to allow some wiggle room to think differently, right? It has been met with challenges, trust me, time and time and time again. but just allow yourself the opportunity to color outside the lines, as I call it, right? And as a person that appreciates art, right, some of us will appreciate a Rembrandt, right? Some of us, like myself, are more along the lines of appreciating the Picasso, right? If anybody knows who Picasso is, it looks like a kid from kindergarten could have scribbled that mess sometimes, right? So it's all perspective, right? It's all about perspective. And I just challenge people to just try and get outside your comfort zone. You know, cast a little bit of caution to the wind. And it's hard. Like I talked openly yesterday with Tyrell and with Aaron about some of the challenges I have with my neighbors, right? As I'm doing something so far outside of their comfort zone, instead of affording me a compliment, right? It's easier to cast shade and criticize, right? Because they don't want me to be successful. Because if I'm successful, it means they need to contemplate what? Change. Yeah. And nobody likes change. I can guarantee you 85% of the guys and women standing right here abhor change. Is that fair? Does anybody like change?
Depends on what it is. Change my underwear.
Change can be painful, expensive, on and on and on, right? But anyways, next question. I'm going to hand the mic over to somebody else. Aaron?
I think on your resiliency, you were talking, Ethan, about your pastures. That's where we saw adding livestock into our annual cropping system, was when we could basically double stock our grass in the summer when the grass was good and go to cropland, that we could run a cow on about a third of the acres that K-State or NRC, anybody tells us it takes to run, and build resiliency. And then when you're a low-cost guy and you can run more numbers, right now in the markets, it's pretty good.
Is that sugar sedan right there?
What's that?
Is that sugar sedan?
Yeah, just a sweet sedan with some.
You got a question?
Well, I was just going to say, like Blake was talking about change, you don't have to jump whole hog into a mix. Say you're going feed, as we'd call it right now. Instead of baling that feed, go graze that feed. Try that first. You have some tools in your toolbox. That's talked about with Ethan. They've tried a couple 100 acres of early planted for summer grazing. Tried to get it in May, but we were cold and wet at that time, and the seed just sat there. So then it gave the weeds a chance to get up and going. So we discussed, well, if we go early, we just need to do like an all grass mix, do a millet sorghum mix, so we have a tool in our toolbox to control the pigweeds if necessary. But that's just something that, again, always learning, always adapting. You don't have to do something diverse to do something different. So
You said you're 5 days roughly in a paddock, and then you're moving. So you got 10 days ish in each strip.
Yeah,
then you'll move over.
10 days roughly, and then
Can you go to 3 days?
yeah.
I mean,
Now-
can you go to 3 days?
Yeah,
In the
now
same,
that
get the same
bulls
days, but
are getting along.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can tighten them down now.
Yeah, it's hard when you're breeding.
Yeah.
It's different,
Yeah.
and when you're calving, it's harder. But your young cows should like having this good forage to breed on.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
Should tighten
Yeah.
that window up. Should add flesh.
Yeah. Your water source, what is it?
Right there.
No, I know, but is it a cistern? Is it a well? Is it municipal water?
It's a meat home and a truck.
Okay.
So we'll graze right here, and then we'll move the tanks down 2/3 down the field, and we can graze over here and over here without having to move the tanks
We've
again.
got a couple of sacrifice places.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you mean by Mayhaul? You got to speak to me in Canadian. Pardon?
He
No.
hauls the water.
Oh, yeah,
me.
me. Oh, Mehal. Okay, Mehal. Okay,
That's the
good.
part I don't like. I hate that. Seems like I'm hauling water 9 months out of the year on something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And didn't NRCS has some stuff available to help drill some water sources or pipelines?
That's something
on
we're thinking in the
cropland now?
future. We'd like to put some wells in.
We've been putting pressure on them. If they want grazing on the land, we have to
Yeah.
put water.
have
Oh,
to have
yeah.
water.
And it
100%.
was always only on perennial stuff.
How accessible is water here where you guys live? Like as far as drilling
It's pretty easy.
finding a
Yeah.
well? Yeah. And typically at what depth is water found?
At our house, we just live mile and a half over that way, 36 feet, we hit water. It's not good water, but it's, it's got mineral in it.
Yeah.
So we have all the water we need. You get up north 80, you're going to go 100 and some feet, probably maybe 150. I'm not sure what it would be here.
Cool.
Well, I hate to break up the conversation, guys, but we gotta trek back, and then we go to the next site. But before we leave, we're gonna get a picture with everybody. We always do a picture for our field events. So you want to scoot down a little bit, Shannon, and get a picture?
I wanted it with the sunflower.
Well, they already bloomed. Sorry.
Sure.
Scoot down a little bit.
Right there on the ground.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You can hold it up.
Yeah, you can hold it up.
Okay, so the owner of this property here is not here today. So what we're gonna do today with this stop is we're gonna kind of compare this field right here to the field across the road. Both of these we're planting into covers. These are two different owners, operators, both long-term no-till. But again, I don't think any of the owners are here today. So we're gonna have one of his employees kind of give a bit of a background on this field. He can introduce himself, and we can go from there.
I'm Cody Nichols. Work for Tyler Crosson, owns this. Been cover crop or no-till forever that I know of. Rotated through covers. Last year it was corn, and then we planted 20-inch triticale in it January 1st or 2nd, the day before that foot of snow that we got. So it didn't even come up till early this spring, and we're kind of surprised how good it really did come up. And then we grazed it lightly there this spring, and I think the flowers are planted the end of June because they're kind of later than we planned on, but which I guess they'll be opening pretty soon. I see a couple of them scattered out that are starting to. Yeah, it's been off and on cover crops before. I said no-tills forever. I don't know. Yeah, lightly. I mean, it wasn't not very hard. And then sprayed and planted into, and
Cool. Any questions for the host? Come on. Now we can't leave the host.
How many pounds acre on the triticale?
Probably around 30. And then, yeah, the drill we got, we can do 10-inch or 20, so we just went 20s. Just mainly it was only planted because this field blows really bad in the spring, and the last couple of years it's blown, and put some out there, and let's see, it worked.
Where do you go with your sunflower seeds after harvest?
They'll go into those grain bins and then truck to Lamar. Yeah.
How far away is that?
Colorado.
6 hours.
6-8 hours.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's me again, your favorite Canadian. One of the most simple tools that I like to use at times, just to make sure that I'm on the right track, is this thing here. Everybody should be familiar with what this is. Everybody? It's a soil thermometer. Okay? Pretty simple. The contrast in management becomes very apparent to me when I start looking around the landscape. And so right away in here, we can see with all of this residue, how much cooler the soil temp is going to be. Okay? So I've had the luxury of putting the thermometer in the soil over here where we've got this really good residue retention. And if I just come over here to bare ground, so it's 10:30 in the morning for all intents and purposes, correct? Sorry to get so close, folks. And we're just going to stick that in there where we got bare ground. So at 10:30 in the morning, it's almost 85-ish Fahrenheit. By the middle of the afternoon, I can bet you that it'll be hotter than the sun, the temperature, right? Just from baking there. It's like the desert. So like I said, out in the field out there, we're about 75 degrees. Everybody know the ideal temperature to pollinate corn?
86. In our area, about 105.
Soil temperature, if we can keep soil to 75 degrees, that's when you get optimal pollination. So obviously, you guys have a challenge here in Kansas, right? Where you're located in the center of the continent. And I said continent because we live in North America, even though I happen to be standing in the US of A. But in the center of this continent of North America, right, you're challenged. And so those are things that are outside of your ability to control. But what we can control is our management. So the more residue we can get on the surface, the more we can protect it with soil armor. That's what helps us. And when I had the opportunity through my Nuffield scholarship that I touched upon earlier, I was in Chile. So I was on Carlos Creveto's farm. He's spoken at the No-Till on the Plains, the National No-Till Conference. He's a no-till pioneer of all pioneers. Carlos's tagline is grain for man, straw for the land. Grain for man, straw for the land. And in Chile, they used to export wheat during the gold rush, California gold rush, all the way up the Pacific from Chile to California, believe it or not. Now in Chile, a lot of those slopes, because there's topography that would be similar but even steeper slopes than this here, a lot of those slopes have been eroded and they're farming the BC horizon. Carlos was one of the few farmers in his area that was still actively farming, growing grain. And a lot of the landscape had been converted over to eucalyptus trees because it just was not feasible anymore to produce a crop because the soil's become that badly eroded. But what I noticed when I was on his farm, and it's very arid, similar to here, dry, hot, as you can imagine in Chile. They're on that side of the mountain range in South America that really limits the amount of precip they get as well. And he can irrigate there, luckily, but doesn't have every acre under irrigation. But when I walked out into his field, similarly, he had all of this abundant legacy residue. And farmers, I don't know about you guys here where we are in Kansas, but at home, farmers, for whatever, are so transfixed on breaking down residue with tillage, right? We gotta combat these BT corn stalks. I keep hearing it over and over again. They're not breaking down. They're not breaking down. And for me, I want to retain all of that residue because I want to keep the soils cool, right? It's to my advantage. When we turn hot and dry like we do, and inevitably we're challenged for precip, to retain all of that surface residue, all of this thatch, right? All of this mulch on top, whatever you want to call it, whatever word you want to call it. We need all of that residue on top there to keep those soil temperatures cooler. And if you were brave enough to take your pants down and sit your bare ass on the soil over here versus on that road, you could tell straight away without using this thermometer. And I tell you that because if you don't have access to the thermometer, your bare bottom will be a good indicator of what system's working. I'm going to turn the mic over to somebody else. Okay. Next guy. Who's up? Aaron.
I'm just walking. Because the
Tyrell.
residue's cycling.
Yeah, and the residue cycling, right? We can see it's breaking down, but we can see some legacy residue here from the previous crops. Corn. Also, probably this is some milo, I would think, right? It's still there?
This is probably the triticale.
Or triticale?
Yep.
Right.
It was, what was this when you guys terminated it? Probably knee high at least. And we were kind of dry there. We had a dry spell there in May where everyone was getting, where everyone was getting nervous. This was in corn, right? Yeah. And then went to triticale. So yeah, you can see that residue is disappearing. Are you going to put a cover in after, or is wheat? It's going to wheat for a cash crop.
Sure.
Yeah. To be harvested for grain.
Yeah. Not much cash to be had. Does anybody have any other questions about the sunflower for anybody here? Or maybe Bryce can come over here and say something. He's grown sunflowers before.
The county APH is 1,300. You would hope for more than that.
A few years ago, I know we had some 2,000 or close to it from full season, but I think they were planning a little earlier and they weren't stressed as much.
So for the non-sunflower grower, what's the biggest risk to growing a crop like this? Pardon?
Bugs and getting rid of it.
So did everybody hear that? The biggest risk is bugs and getting rid of it. So what kind of bugs are you dealing with?
Head moth, stem
They'll
weevil.
probably be sprayed, I guess, twice for head moths. Maybe not.
But the good thing is I've already seen ladybugs.
Yep,
I've seen a
yep.
lot of beneficials out here just walking around, just what little bit we see. But there's an economic threshold involved in this, right? You know, and 2 years ago during the middle of the drought, the only thing that we had growing in 23 that survived that didn't collect crop insurance was sunflowers for us. And we ended up having to spray for the head moth because when you walk out there and you look at the economic threshold of that crop when we walked out, we were like 800 times the threshold. So, I mean, it was a no-brainer. You're going to have to do it or you're going to completely lose that crop. That's where the craziness of the regenerative part comes in, right? I mean, it's not the choice I wanted to make to use an insecticide to get rid of that because I knew I was going to take away beneficials and a lot of other stuff. But when you're in the middle of the drought and the only crop you have left, you have to do what's economically makes sense for that crop.
Is there anything you can plant with sunflowers to help eliminate?
Yeah, I mean, you could have companion crops out here. I mean, there's a lot of buckwheat you could add into this system that would bring, more beneficials into that. If you can withstand to grow the cover crop to have enough to make this a crop, right? That's the whole balance in Kansas that is the struggle is if I grow a cover, do I have enough moisture left to grow anything with it, or can I companion with that crop? But yeah, for me, what I've seen, it's a pretty clean field for pigweeds. Their pigweeds are horrible to control in sunflowers. They're just not great pre-emerges. Not a lot of stuff in here. The triticale probably helped you out there. It's tying up any excess nutrients that were out here that the pigweed's not really wanting to take off. So that was a good call having the yeah, yeah, right. Right. There's just not a lot of options when you come into pre-emerges for the sunflowers. But yeah, I mean, so that's tying up the nutrients on that. What people don't understand is these taproots on sunflowers, they're awesome elevators, right? They will bring up a lot of stuff in here and moisture. I guarantee, even though everybody tells you the farce is you'll have no moisture left when you're done with these sunflowers, every one of those roots, when you go dig in it afterwards, even after you harvest, there's going to be moisture underneath of them. They will bring that moisture right back up. They're a great elevator.
And earthworms.
And earthworms, yep.
Sacrifice a small one. We got to claim that ditch.
And it looks like to me a victim of the year. Did you guys spread some dry fertilizer on this? Or it just might be sprayer tracks. You can see those.
Yeah.
You can see those tracks out there. I mean, and you guys had, most everybody, a pretty wet planting season, and so it was pretty hard to get away from creating any of that compaction.
Any other questions on this? Anybody take a whiff of the soil yet? We'll go across the road and we'll go look at that stuff.
Let's go across. March.
Oh, aphids.
Which kind?
I'd assume sugarcane aphids, but
They're corn leaf aphids.
oh.
The
Well,
sugarcane
well, what are they doing on the mile?
Well, they'll infect us. There might be a few. They're usually
So this would be this is Tom Tibbet's field. We stopped at one of his fields when Jay was up here. This was corn last year that he harvested in probably September, I'm guessing. He went in with 20 to 30 pounds of triticale, like 6 pounds of Austrian winter peas, a pound or two of vetch, and some rape. He burned this off in sometime in May. He had sprayed it. I don't know if he ever got it grazed. And then, as you can see, he went back to Milo with it. And if you get out here and you look in between the rows, there is some residue left. You can see the corn stalks. You can see the triticale left over.
Pass me.
Again, spring was kind of dry.
Liberty, pass me that thermometer.
So guys pulled the plug. a little earlier than they might have wanted to. And he's still got some escapes, but as far as pigweeds, but that's just been the year around here, around these parts so far. So. But just walking, I do see see some ladybugs out here. Aaron was pointing out there are some aphids.
But there's a non.
So like an auctioneer, do I have any guesses? Do I have any guesses? Do I have any guesses? What's the soil temperature? What's the soil temperature? What's the soil temperature? Any guesses? Any guesses? Any guesses? Do I have any guesses? Soil temperature.
70.
70. I have a 70. Do I have a 60? 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 Pardon? 68. 68. 68. Any other guesses? Any other guesses? Going once. Going twice. Right here down below in the soil canopy, it was about 75, 77. So pretty idealistic, really. You know, and I would expect as we get off the headland too, perhaps out there in the middle of the field, it might be a little less, even a little lower rather in temperature, where we don't have the same potential for as much physical compaction as we move along the edges, right? But that's pretty cool. I think when you look at the contrast between, you know, not having residue and what you can do with residue, and then having a crop canopy. So, observations with the sugarcane aphid.
Oh. Yeah. So observation when I walk in the field is you see the aphid damage, and who has had to treat for sugarcane aphids? Anybody? One time. So these are the corn leaf aphid. So the first thing you do is identify the right aphid, right? So these don't really pose a risk to sorghum. You can tell the difference. We went through that. I was a county agent for a little over 8 years. So you're on people's places doing scouting. Well, should I spray? Well, that's up to you, but this is what the threshold is, and looking at, you know, alternative pest management. But it's got a nice color to the plant. I guess it's fairly high bricks right now, so that should help a little with the sugar in the leaf.
Yep. Looks good.
I don't know if Sam's allowed it. You'll allow it, but you might. But in every one of the soil health buckets that every conservation district in the state of Kansas has, will have a thermometer in there, just like what Blake's using to go in there. And I don't know if you guys are checking those buckets out, or
We would. Definitely could.
so if you need it, right.
And at times, I had some grant money last year. What did we give away? 60 buckets that Bryce made me. They're really handy, practical in-field applications that you can do on your own time. Scan the barcode, and then you see Bryce's smiling face walking you through everything in there.
So anybody got any other observations? Any other questions? Want to make a comment?
You made the comment, and we've noticed it, that herbicide chemistry of any didn't work this year.
Sure doesn't seem. I mean,
this field's fairly clean compared to. I mean, it's got some pigweeds.
Yeah.
And it's got armor when you look at the ground.
Yeah. And that's something that talking with Blake last night, Blake brought up multiple times and he brought it up today, was the aesthetics. And I don't know if it's, like I said, if it's just because we have been dry the last several years, so we're finally had some wet cycles here, so we're flushing out all the nutrients that we've been putting on all these fields over the years, and so we have pigweed escapes, or are we just getting into a new paradigm where, well, the economic expenses don't justify the cost of taking out a handful of pigweeds? I mean, what's the economic tolerance? These pigweeds are probably not going to have any kind of economic impact on this milo crop. Not enough to speak of. Not when it's what, $2.80 milo right now locally. I mean, so just one of those things that what's it worth economically to control? So, I mean,
The big question too is, like, would you want to fully feed a crop right now at this stage? Is it economically valuable to go to fully feed
Yeah. Probably depends on what has already been spent already. I know for me personally, it's like, it's going to be what it's going to be. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
anybody have any questions, any comments about the sunflowers? I know, Greg, have you grown flowers in the past? You got any comments to make? Anything to add to the conversation? What you've seen, you've got the years of experience doing this in this area. Get that recorded on camera. Yeah, you got. Why don't you talk a little bit about why we went away from flowers in this area?
Well, I guess one of the big reasons we went away from flowers is we didn't have a herbicide that when we were planting was before Authority Supreme came out. So, I mean, that's probably the best thing we've got for herbicide. And there's some makers coming back now because we've got herbicide.
And the economics are there right now, even with the travel. Because isn't that basically what Tyler said was this is better? This is going to be better than beans, even with the trucking. So, which doesn't seem possible when you got to truck it 8 hours.
They come pick it all up. Or they send trucks. They send trucks.
It's based upon your bid. I mean, basically, a lot of times they'll pay you for the storage, but then that covers the difference in the trucking. And
Are these confectionery or are they seed oil?
Oil.
And what's the end use for the oil?
sunflower food oil, mainly. A lot of cosmetics, lip balms, chapsticks, some other cosmetic products.
So here, has anybody like myself get nervous about hearing the pressure that we're constantly under as agriculturalists as it pertains to seed oils? Anybody ever hear anybody bitching and moaning about seed oils?
A little bit,
right? And years ago, a multinational corporation I worked for that's in the seed space, I'll just leave it at that, was coming out with an oil, basically transgenic line of oil that they introduced to Canada first because it wasn't approved yet in the States. And I asked the question, I said, are you going to invest in infrastructure, so bricks and mortar essentially, or grain bins, or whatever you want to refer to it as, to segregate it? Because the big players, the other multinationals that are in the grain merchant side of this industry that we participate in, were worried about segregation, right? Everybody remember the Starlink fiasco of corn and how that impacted the grain price, right? So similarly, when they're bringing this trait forward with this more healthy oil in soybeans, the merchants were very nervous because they didn't want to jeopardize the market, and rightly so. But the seed company, again, their profit is made the minute that we strip open that bag, right? That's where their profit ends. Unless now they're in the business of also selling us things like herbicide, right? So they've introduced herbicide resistance to our crops, and now other things like fungicides. I've tried to distance myself on our farm, rightly or wrongly, from requiring a lot of traded technology, specifically to soybeans. And I've gone away from producing soybeans for oil, which is typically the stream in which Roundup, glyphosate resistant, dicamba resistant, enlist resistant, Liberty resistant, we all know the story, the path at which those soybeans go down. I'm trying to get back to considering myself to be a producer of food first and foremost. So I'm growing, my beans are all now 100% non-GMO. They all go into a food stream. Tragically, most of us here do not consume tofu, right? How many people ate tofu this morning for breakfast? Anybody? Tofu? Miso? What about last night for supper? Anybody? Tofu, miso? Right? So we're growing this crop, soybeans, to be exported to people on the other side of the planet that do have that as part of their staple diet, right? And I think it really screams to me how important it is that we find ourselves in this space of recognizing that all of us, each and every one of us, regardless of where we live at this planet, still need to eat, right? And it's a lot, I think, in my brain, it satisfied this need, not to be sanctimonious, but it provides me more warm and fuzzies, for lack of a better descriptive, knowing that I'm producing food again and not just simply producing oil to make, heaven forbid, plastic, right? Biodiesel, synthetic clothing, whatever it is, right? That it's actually, if I'm a farmer, I'm producing food and we're using the land to produce food. So when I hear these stories and I ask the difficult question, where's the oil going to hear that it's being used for consumable, because typically sunflower oil is seen as a better profile, fat profile, than some of these other oils. I like that too, right? It sort of aligns with my own beliefs, and rightly or wrongly, I just thought I'd share that perspective too, and we have to be in a position, like, not that there's anything wrong. We still need to, as farmers, we still need to be able to produce a crop. We still need to be able to make a living. I understand all of that, but we got to somehow be able to tell our story in a positive light, right? And share with the greater audience that is constantly putting pressure on us to change our ways, or they vilify us for the management that we're implementing on the land. So just a little food for thought, nothing else, no pun intended. Microphone.
Anybody got anything else? You got time. Nothing? All right. I guess we'll get back on the bus. So it's 11, right?
We're gonna have relay races, and we're gonna start.
We could go to another stop if you really want.
Have you read anything about seed oils being bad?
Yeah, they can be, definitely.
I mean, as far as nutrition.
Oh yeah.